It begins with someone explaining that reincarnation is like a spinning roulette wheel, where you might end up reborn as an animal or even a cockroach scuttling on the ground. If you're fortunate enough to be reborn as a human again, it's as though you've beaten the odds. But to cut to the chase, our protagonist was lucky enough to survive this game of chance, as the spinning roulette chose him to be human once more. It's said that in his previous life he literally worked himself to death, and it seems like this time around, things are looking promising so far. However, the body he has reincarnated into belongs to an extra character in a dark, depressing novel he used to enjoy. Specifically, a one-time villain who gets killed off early in the story, the hopeless troublemaker Han Siha. As he reflects on this with disappointment, the scene reveals that Han Siha is a talented but lazy young man with an interest in black magic, which eventually leads to his tragic end after he discovers its taboo. Han Siha also has a petty personality, unable to overcome his greed, which ultimately causes his demise as a mere extra character. His abilities seem unimpressive, so there's no need to dwell on them. Moving on to the real situation, our protagonist finds himself stuck in this unfortunate character and curses the spinning wheel of fate for placing him in such a dire situation. He laments that if he had any free will in this matter, he would have chosen a more promising role, perhaps as a hero or someone with a handsome face. Joking aside, our protagonist is genuinely worried that his new identity will only bring him trouble. He finds himself in a particularly bad situation, as Han Siha has ended up in an auxiliary facility for dark mages. The current scenario unfolds during a time when Han Siha, who once had high expectations due to his natural magical potential, has been ostracized at the academy because of his lack of real-world skills. Han Siha is now attempting to join a dark magic organization, and the mysterious people facing him seem to ignore him at first. One of them asks who he is, while another casually mentions that he's just a kid begging to join their organization. They also note that the boy is a student at Ardell Academy. One of the members then gets a bold idea, eyeing him with a sinister look, and suggests that if the boy is a student at Ardell Academy, he might be useful to them. He instructs him to follow them. Hearing this, our protagonist starts to panic and begins to sweat, unsure whether to follow or not. He realizes he has no choice since he's in no position to defeat them, so he agrees and follows them. As they walk, the man asks if he knows the procedure for joining. Our protagonist responds that of course he knows, all the while thinking that once he draws the blood of a member and swears an oath to dark magic, he'll be trapped for life. He also knows that this dark mage organization is a cliched evil force that will eventually be destroyed by the protagonist of the novel he read. If he goes through with the dark mage contract, he will be killed by the protagonist as well. Realizing this, he concludes that instead of following these people, he must figure out how to escape from this death trap immediately. Suddenly, he stops as a notification appears, a system prompt synchronizing the story from Han Siha's perspective. As the synchronization completes, the system warns him to escape. Shocked by this sudden appearance of what seems like a cheat code, our protagonist is momentarily stunned. At that very moment, a loud, eerie scream echoes through the facility, as though someone is being tortured. This unnerves our protagonist even more, while the man with him asks his companion about the sound, wondering if something is happening in their basement. The man decides to go check what's going on, but not before threatening our protagonist, telling him that if he tries to flee, he's as good as dead. The man advises him to stay put if he values his life, and our protagonist nervously agrees. Once the men rush off, leaving him behind, our protagonist realizes this is his chance to escape. He starts running, holding his breath, but with no idea where to go. Exhausted, he stops to think, cursing himself for running around like a lunatic without knowing the way out. As he pauses, he spots a door in front of him and sees some light approaching from behind it, making him wonder if it's the right direction. However, as he contemplates this, he hears voices behind him. Members of the dark magic organization are passing by. Panicking, he rushes to hide as the two men discuss a kid who escaped from their third basement floor. They're clearly referring to our protagonist, who realizes he's in deep trouble if they find him. As the two men move away, they mention that the boy is a student of Ardell Academy and suspect he might be a spy. Once they're far enough, our protagonist checks his surroundings, ensuring it's safe before rushing to open the door in front of him. Unfortunately, the door is locked, and despite his efforts to push it open, he fails. Feeling hopeless, he tries to think of a solution. He realizes that in this situation, the only thing he can rely on is Han-Siha's memory. Even if Han-Siha was a worthless character, he must have known something useful. Cursing under his breath, he recalls that Han-Siha had no talent for white magic but was born with a significant amount of magic power within his body. This uncontrollable magic power made it impossible for him to focus on any particular goal. In other words, our protagonist just needs to control this magic power and concentrate to achieve his objective. He focuses and successfully directs the magic power into his fingertips, placing his hand on the lock in front of him, and releases all of it, hoping to open the door. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, and he's even more exhausted than before. While catching his breath, he mutters that his skills are clearly not good enough and that he has a long way to go. Suddenly, he hears a noise behind him, and it seems like a beast is approaching, its domineering aura evident as its eyes glow in the dark. As our protagonist turns around, he sees someone looking at him with a worried expression. Surprised, he realizes that this might be the end for him, but instead of being scared, he turns around to face the approaching beast. He was amazed to see a cute little dragon there, roaring a cute tune as it approached him and grabbed his robes, indicating that it wanted to be picked up. Our boy picked up the dragon while wondering why a little dragon had made its way to this place and why it was so friendly toward people. Thinking this, he told the cute dragon, in a cold and direct manner, that he couldn't take it with him because managing himself was already hard enough. Despite this, the dragon was shocked and couldn't believe it, so it started to act and cry like an innocent little dragon. However, our boy, feeling cold-hearted, tried to stop the little dragon from making noise. The dragon, not one to be easily deterred, continued to make a fuss, leaving our boy with no choice but to let it come along. He ran like crazy, demanding that the little dragon was doing it on purpose, but, in his mind, he couldn't adopt something he couldn't be responsible for. As he was thinking this, he suddenly stopped and realized that since it had come to this, he might as well use the dragon's power. While contemplating this, his system suddenly popped up, indicating that his taming ability was unlocked and asking if he wished to tame the little dragon. The system identified it as a suspicious hatchling and displayed its abilities, Level 2, with magic power of 50 and attributes in strength, agility, and intelligence. It also had a skill, Flamethrower Level 1. Seeing this, he was surprised and somewhat confused, and was further frustrated to find no accept button on his system. He figured he would need to handle the little dragon directly to tame it. Realizing this, he acknowledged that he had some experience and talent in taming and boasted that, with a few gestures of his technique, he could reassure the dragon and build trust. He told the little dragon to trust him while looking at it seriously, though he was worried deep down about whether he was doing it correctly. Thankfully, the little dragon seemed to accept him as its contractor. It floated into the air, emitting a glowing light that indicated the taming was successful. As the dragon descended, our boy wondered if the taming had truly been successful, expecting more from the situation. Shaking off his doubts, he decided to check for himself and commanded his new pet, referring to it as Reptile, to perform its first task: break the lock on the door. The little reptile, with glowing eyes, jumped and bit the chain lock, breaking it instantly. Our boy was shocked, as he hadn't expected it to break so easily. With the lock broken and their escape now possible, he praised the little dragon, saying it had done a great job. Our boy was happy to make it live, but suddenly footsteps arose, and he felt a bad omen. As he looked back, the guys told him that a rat, referring to him, was hiding there. They said if they caught him, they would roast him alive. Panicking, our boy found himself unable to move due to fear, and he wondered what to do. While forcing himself to think, the guys started approaching him. Suddenly, an idea popped into his head. He remembered a spell called Smog, the first self-defense spell taught at their academy. This spell creates smoke for concealment and is basic enough for anyone to learn, even without magical talent. Though he knew about it, he had never actually used it. With no other choice, he decided to give it a try. Steadying his breath, he focused his energy on his fingertips, imagining he was holding a gun. As he attempted the spell, he was pleased to see it work. A light line began to emanate from his fingers, and the guys stopped, surprised. Our boy cast the spell, creating a smoke screen around them. Amazed and happy that the spell worked, he saw the guys distracted by the smoke and began to flee towards the door. As he opened it, a sudden spirit hand reached out, grabbing him by the neck. Shocked and unable to breathe properly, he fell to the ground. His cute reptile pet rushed to him, concerned. As he lay there, wondering if this was the end, he noticed that the guy seemed to be sweating, and he couldn't see the companion. It appeared the guy was worried about something, possibly because the spell he cast was consuming a lot of mana. Despite feeling hopeless, our boy thought it was unfair to be reborn only to die again. He desperately tried to think of a way to break free from the spell, even as his breathing became more labored. He realized he had one more card to play, his pet reptile. The reptile, worried and grabbing his robe, looked at him. Our boy told him that if he really wanted to escape, he should listen and forgive him for controlling him with his inadequate skills. Determined, he asked for his pet's help. The cute reptile spread its wings and approached the guy with a domineering aura, releasing a flamethrower. The fire enveloped the guy, who shouted in pain, confused by the sudden appearance of the powerful beast. Meanwhile, our boy was finally free as the spirit hand disappeared. As the reptile watched the guy burn, it roared to our boy as if asking if he was okay. Though he hadn't expected this turn of events, he was grateful to have such a reliable pet. Smiling, he was surprised when his reptile jumped on him. They comforted each other, and it was a refreshing feeling. While enjoying the moment, our boy told his pet that he owed his life to him and promised to take him as he had promised. They needed to get out of there first. An hour later, they were in a desert, venturing towards a cave. As they walked, they felt relieved to be far from their previous location, but they were exhausted and thirsty due to the desert heat. The boy vowed not to get caught by the dark mages again, as it would certainly mean death. In the distance, he saw a carriage and approached it, asking the old driver for a ride. The old man asked if he had money, and after checking his robe pocket, the boy found a gold card. He asked the old man if this would be sufficient, and the old man, shocked, recognized the card as one provided by Ardell Academy, which indicated privileges. After reconsidering, the old man agreed to give them a ride. The boy and his reptile were grateful and thanked him. As they were about to board the carriage, the old man asked where they were going. At that moment, the boy paused, appearing worried as he realized he had rushed out without a plan. He was concerned that the dark mages might find him soon and, not wanting their information to be leaked, would kill him on sight. With no choice but to proceed despite the danger, he decided to head to the Ardell Academy, a place he considered the safest option, even though some people wished him dead. According to the novel he read, the academy was reputed to be a good place to hide for a while. Thus, his new journey began. At the Ardell Academy, a girl was rushing to enter. This woman, Celine, was a second-year assistant professor. She proudly displayed her promising figure and remarked that the academy had not failed to impress her. She commented on the luxurious marble floors, the elegant chandeliers, and even the refined air exuded by the students' uniforms. As she waved to them, her gaze suddenly caught sight of something ghostly. The boy, who had arrived on an old and dusty carriage, was surrounded by dust. Many students noticed him as he stepped out of the carriage in a dusty robe with a weary face. Celine could hardly believe her eyes and felt like collapsing at the sight of him disrupting their luxurious academy. She wondered how such a student could be here, thinking of him as a tarnish on the academy's reputation right from the start of the semester. She recalled that the boy was Han Siha, who had almost failed due to his inability to control his innate magical power. Meanwhile, Han Siha was hiding a cute reptile inside his robe, which was demanding to be freed. Noticing Celine's frantic reaction, Han Siha wondered who she was and deduced that she must be a professor. He approached her and asked if he was late. Celine confirmed that he was right, but then looked him up and down, dismissing him as unworthy of attention. She remarked that she didn't have time to worry about a failure with no potential and might let it go. She dismissed the thought, believing he wasn't worth her concern. Recalling the rumors, she remembered people talking about how he was creepy, dabbling in black magic and even hugging a voodoo doll every night. Getting involved with him wouldn't bring anything good, so she tapped his shoulder, urging him to hurry up and get inside. He appreciated her gesture, showing a softer, brighter side that caught her off guard. In that moment, she felt a shift in her perception, realizing that as she became a second-year professor, her perspective had changed. She watched him as he walked into the room. Inside, he was somewhat popular among his classmates, though not in a good way. They whispered and chatted about how he was a strange guy, mentioning his earlier entrance by carriage, which they viewed as a sign of poverty. They ridiculed his behavior, but he remained calm, thinking to himself that he was doomed, just a minor villain character in this world. He sat alone at the back, listening to his classmates continue their gossip, speculating that he had only advanced because he had begged the professors. Hearing this, he wondered if his family had bribed someone for his advancement, or if a professor had recognized some overwhelming potential in him, or perhaps a magic tower had sent a recommendation. Still, he thought to himself that for now, he needed to figure out how to survive in this dark fantasy novel using his own strength. He broke down his survival goals into two main objectives. First, he needed to live quietly and avoid drawing attention to himself. However, as a third-rate villain who was violent and incompetent, he knew he was destined to meet a gruesome end, buried alive by the protagonist of this world. Worried, he considered that since the academy was closing for the year, the exact reason for his death remained unclear. Perhaps it was because he was a bad guy who left too many loose ends. But since he didn't know what crime would lead to his murder, he resolved to live quietly and cautiously, preferring to die from hard work rather than being buried alive. His second plan was to graduate safely. If he could do that, he might be able to adapt and live in this new world. Although his family was wealthy, they had disowned him due to his past behavior, so his diploma would be a reliable retirement plan to survive and make a living. He decided to avoid getting involved with the protagonist, as that would likely lead to his demise. Instead, he would live quietly as an ordinary student, doing his best to avoid any scenario that might lead to his end. The professor entered the room, and everyone greeted him, murmuring about the tense aura he brought with him. Our protagonist recognized him as Professor Grint from the magic department. While he sat there chilling, his classmates worried that their exams this semester would be difficult. They whispered that their professor was scary, getting louder as they talked, but the professor silenced them, telling them to be quiet. He praised them, saying that those who advanced to the second year were quite good and that he could see some students standing out. Our protagonist agreed, noting that there were many promising students among them, including the protagonist of the story. But because of this quality, he knew that the stakes were high, making survival more difficult for him. He explained that the academy accepted students aged 14 to 19, offering a 6-year curriculum known for its rigor. Thanks to the promising students who won competitions, the academy's reputation had grown, turning it into a competitive arena. However, this also had a downside, as only 10% of students graduated with flying colors. He sighed, realizing how intense it would be for him to compete with the protagonist, who, according to the original plot, would rapidly grow in power within a black magic organization. But, since he had decided to live quietly, this path was impossible for him. In good timing, the professor mentioned that there were many students who did not meet the academy's standards, and those who lacked the necessary skills would not be allowed to continue in his class. Our protagonist was shocked, feeling as though he had been slapped in the face. The professor seemed to be referring specifically to him, looking at him with a serious expression. The professor then announced the schedule for the opening exam, tapping his walking stick on the ground, causing an illusionary announcement to appear in front of them. The protagonist was amazed by the spell, remarking that it was an unbelievable display of magic. The illusion showed that based on their experience from the past year, they needed to choose 3 subjects and take both written and practical exams in those subjects. His interest was piqued by the sophisticated illusion, noting that the spell level was top-notch, showcasing the magic their academy could perform. However, he also thought that being able to freely choose their exam subjects could be advantageous, allowing them to take the exam without much difficulty. Still, he suspected there might be a twist, wondering what it could be. The professor then explained that the subject selection would be limited and on a first-come, first-served basis. The order in which they could choose subjects would be determined by random selection. The class was shocked, and a noisy buzz spread through the room as they discussed the fairness of these rules. Our protagonist hadn't expected this either, commenting that it felt like they were playing a lottery in class, finding the rules unfriendly. The professor then said he would personally draw the balls containing their names from a box to determine the order. Our protagonist thought to himself that if he had to rely on luck even in his exams, he was truly pitiful. He felt that heaven was playing a joke on him, as his current situation left him somewhat clueless about magic. The only option he had was to choose and pick subjects early to manage his grades, but he doubted his chances of success. He felt that his luck had already been used up in escaping those dark magicians, leaving him wondering what he could do now. Meanwhile, the professor looked at the ball he had drawn from the box, announcing that the first student to choose a subject was Han Siha, our protagonist. He was surprised, but also thankful to have been picked first, realizing that his luck hadn't entirely run out yet. He started looking at the subjects, considering that since he wasn't familiar with magic, he should skip the practical-oriented subjects. He also wanted to avoid subjects related to necromancy or anything mentioned in the story. As he checked the list, he found that all the subjects seemed difficult, and he couldn't find a proper one to choose. But finally, he spotted one that seemed easier for him, the exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas. However, he hesitated, thinking that the name made it sound incredibly difficult. Yet, he had no choice since it was the only available subject that seemed manageable. He added that he seemed good at memorization, so he might be able to handle it. While his classmates chatted about his choice, saying that he picked the arithmetic subject, they were thankful as they found that subject challenging. With them still chatting, he quickly needed to choose his remaining 2 subjects. While picking, he noticed something different, saying that it seemed doable. The scene then shifted to the library, where he was quietly studying. He thought to himself that before he had died from overwork and ended up in this world, he had worked as an intern veterinarian. The 3 subjects he chose seemed somewhat similar to his major subjects in veterinary science. He first needed to study the exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas, as he believed that these methods were unique to this world. He remarked that he would not be able to apply the math formulas he knew sufficiently. Now that he had finished studying them, his next focus was on a book titled Monster Anatomy, which was an introduction to basic taming and behavioral science. However, he became so absorbed in his studies that he forgot about the pet inside his bag. Other students passing by grew suspicious and curious as to why his bag was moving. It became troublesome for him to ignore, so when his cute reptile tried to come out, he pushed it back inside to prevent it from being seen and causing a commotion due to its unusual appearance. Even though the reptile wanted to come out and play, he thought that since he had brought it along, he might as well put it to good use. But the situation quickly became troublesome, with too many eyes around. As he forced the reptile back inside, it became annoyed and fought to stay out, forcing him to leave the area. While walking away, he reflected on how someone like him, who could barely control his magic, had suddenly tamed a dragon hatchling. He knew that the cute creature would attract unwanted attention, so he resolved to be more cautious next time. After leaving the library, he headed to the Academy's underground training area. Standing there, he told his reptile that it could now run freely as a wild beast in this safe place and do whatever it wanted. As they walked inside, he thought that since he had managed to grasp the theory to some extent, this would be a good opportunity to practice his taming skills. He approached the staff managing the training ground and asked for an entry ticket to the beginner practice area. The staff member, surprised, looked at his cute reptile and noted that it was a hatchling. She asked for his name, and he introduced himself as Han Siha, a second-year student. However, when asked for the name of his reptile, he realized with shock that he hadn't named it yet. He asked the reptile what its name was, and the little creature scratched its head and looked at him with a confused expression. Han Siha wondered if the reptile wanted him to choose a name, and when the reptile spoke a chime, he took it as a sign to pick a name. The reptile seemed to agree with this, so Han Siha started thinking. However, the reptile grew angry when he didn't understand him right away. As he continued to think, he suggested names like Drake, Carcharodontosaurus, and Charizard, thinking that the last one was the coolest name he could come up with. The reptile, however, looked at him with intense displeasure, signaling that if Han didn't choose a better name, it might roast him. Realizing how picky the reptile was, Han Siha carefully chose a unique name and finally settled on Basilisk. The reptile seemed to like it, showing a bright expression, so the name Basilisk was officially chosen. The staff member registered the name and mentioned that the training area could accommodate up to 2 people, and that another person was already in one of the other rooms. Han Siha paid little attention to this and allowed the staff member to guide them to the weaponry room to choose their equipment. She explained that the weapons were available as rentals for students like them. Han Siha commented that the weapons looked pretty crappy, perhaps because they were free, but he knew it wasn't the time to be picky. He wanted to get stronger and decided to be grateful for whatever he could get. He picked out a shield and a wand stick, and once they were ready, the staff member guided them to the gate, opening it and telling them it was the beginner practice area. As the gate opened, Han Siha felt a mix of worry, astonishment, and excitement. Stepping inside, he was amazed by the beautiful garden-like setting, remarking on its crazy quality. As they ventured further, he spotted a group of slimes happily conversing with each other. Han Siha observed this and commented that even low-level monsters could be somewhat kind-hearted. However, he wasn't that kind-hearted himself. He asked Basil if he saw those square blocks of slime, and when Basil responded affirmatively, Han Siha told him that they were going to blow them up. The cold-hearted master gave his reptile a severe expression, causing Basil to tremble at the thought of what was to come. But Basil had no choice and went ahead, annihilating the slimes. Han Siha, watching Basil in action, noted that the little dragon seemed to be enjoying itself more than he was, thinking that Basil's dragon instincts were awakening. Han Siha cursed at the sight of the once-scared reptile now fully embracing its nature. As Basil ate the slimes, Han Siha walked around the area, believing that Basil was fine on its own. He decided it was time to practice and improve his skills and abilities. As he ventured further, the sound of a beast echoed through the area, followed by an attack aimed at him. He noticed it just in time and reacted quickly, defending himself. He wondered what had suddenly ambushed him, and when the attacker appeared, it turned out to be the same slime monsters seeking revenge. His karma had come quickly. Han Siha realized that he wasn't strong enough to defeat them all, but with Basil and a solid strategy, he could take them down one by one. Basil, having finished playing with the slimes, returned to Han Siha's side. Han asked Basil if he had stretched enough and told him to sit on his shoulder. Han Siha then laid out his plan, instructing Basil to attack and blow up the monsters as they had practiced before. Basil rashly followed Han Siha's command, opening its mouth and releasing a powerful flamethrower that obliterated the monsters, leaving nothing but dust. Han Siha was shocked by how much stronger Basil had become, praising it for a promising and excellent job. He told Basil that they must continue practicing and improving their skills like crazy. After half a day of intense training, the two of them lay exhausted on the ground. Han Siha reflected on how, during his practice, he had been switching between taming Basil and casting offensive spells, and now he truly felt like he might die from the effort. However, he observed that Basil was now listening to him very well. He swore that once they got back to the dorm, he would feed Basil well with delicious food. As Han Siha was saying this, he noticed that Basil had fallen asleep. Then Han-siha noticed something happening in the distance. Curious, they both went to check it out. They discovered that it was the other student who had been mentioned earlier by the staff member. This student was training, but their beast seemed to be playing around, scooping mud while the student knelt down in hopelessness, clearly frustrated that their beast wasn't listening to them. The student angrily addressed their misbehaving dog, and Han-siha saw the girl's face, which looked like she was about to explode with anger. The girl calmed herself, stood there, and tried again, giving her best, but the beast didn't seem comfortable with her. It barked at her, causing her to hesitate. Meanwhile, the boy was watching her attempt to tame the beast. He commented that her method of treating the hellhound was incorrect. She shouldn't handle it that way, he said, while observing her. The girl, frustrated, shouted at her beast to return and sit down, but it didn't listen and ran off. As she searched for her beast, she cursed under her breath, angry that the beast wouldn't obey. She vowed that if she caught it, it would regret it. As she walked around looking for the hellhound, she noticed her troublesome beast had suddenly become gentle and was now obediently sitting beside the boy. She approached them with a cautious yet curious demeanor, wondering how this second-year student, Han-siha, had managed to tame it. When the boy noticed her, he asked if the beast was her pet, adding that he had been observing her for a while. He advised her that her approach to taming the beast was wrong. The girl looked confused and disheartened as the boy explained that when a tamer becomes too emotional, it agitates the beast even more. She was surprised and found it hard to believe that Han-siha was offering her advice. As she pondered the situation, she recalled that at Ardell Academy, the most prestigious school in the Empire, she, Adele, an Earth Mage, had never ranked lower than third. Despite her commoner background and the many challenges she faced, her innate talent was undeniable, with few able to match her skills. However, she had been unlucky during the opening exams, drawing the subject she was weakest in: basic taming. Knowing her taming skills were lacking, she had come here to practice. What puzzled her even more was that Han-siha, who couldn't even tame a slime the previous year, was now effortlessly handling her hellhound. Rumors had circulated about him being obsessed with black magic, and many viewed him as gloomy, inferior, and a failure. Yet here he was, taming her once unruly beast and making it gentle. She asked him how he did it, to which the boy responded that her beast was no longer agitated, so she could take it back now. She understood and picked up her beast, thanking him. The boy then followed up with a question, asking why she had chosen a hellhound, noting that it was quite challenging for a first-time tamer. She explained, with a hint of pride, that a difficult monster like that held high value for her, which is why she chose it. The boy nodded, seemingly understanding, and jokingly remarked that he thought she might prefer something like mud bathing instead. The girl was irritated by his comment, but she realized that Han-siha always seemed to be the type to speak without hesitation, regardless of their differing social statuses. She, a commoner, and he, a noble. As she observed the creature next to him, she realized with surprise that it was a dragon hatchling, and she was even more astonished that Han-siha had already tamed it. This was rare for someone at their level as second-year students. She noted to herself that Han-siha seemed like a completely different person. They continued together to the spot where the block slimes were located, with Adele confirming that it was the right place. It seemed that the boy had suggested this location for her to practice and improve the cooperation between her and her beast, allowing them to become more familiar with each other. The boy confirmed that this was indeed the right place, so Adele got started. She moved the vines and grass aside to reveal a group of block slimes hiding in that spot. It appeared to be their spawn area. As she checked it out, the boy mentioned that he had almost wiped them out, but they respawned immediately. Hearing this, she assured him not to worry, drawing her sword and confidently stating that she could finish them off in one hit. She boasted, much like the boy, but as she said this, she ordered him to step aside for a moment and began to fight the slimes. The slimes were the first to attack, but with just a single swing of her sword, Adele annihilated them all, leaving a destructive mark behind. The boy, watching this, was a bit amazed, but he teased her, saying that her rough method seemed like she was burying them alive. This angered Adele, but she managed to control her emotions and tried to respond calmly, pretending to ignore the boy's words. Meanwhile, one slime survived and was about to attack her, but before it could, the boy used magic to attack it. Adele couldn't believe it, remembering that Han Siha couldn't use proper magic before. She was shocked as she watched him. The boy noticed her shock and asked if she hadn't realized that a slime was approaching her. Still in shock, she tried to reason, saying she knew, but in truth she hadn't noticed. However, before she could finish her sentence, the boy started to leave, calling his cute basilisk to follow him, and told her that it was a relief to know she could handle things now. As he walked away, Adele reflected on the truth that she hadn't sensed the slime and realized that Han Siha's accuracy with spell arrows was not something a beginner should possess. She began to say something, but her words were cut off when suddenly an error occurred in the dungeon, and the sound of an emergency alarm echoed. Both of them became alert, and the boy asked if she knew what could have caused the alarm. She didn't know either, and they both started thinking about what might be happening. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, a man reported to the honorary principal that an emergency had occurred in the training ground dungeon. The principal, hearing this, asked if there had been an error with the spell and inquired about the current situation inside, including the students present. The man replied that there were 2 students, one named Han Siha. The principal sighed for a moment, commenting that the boy seemed to be a troublemaker. He implied that even if the boy died, it wouldn't matter much, but the girl, Adele, was a different story. She was promising and talented, and her survival was of greater importance. The principal lamented that Han Siha had no talent or skill, and speculated that the boy might die.